Okay. All right, folks. This is the final project. I shouldn't say project. Final assignment. Working on a simple walk cycle with our Aang rig here. So this is my work in progress from first period. So I'm just going to continue it so that everyone can see more of the cycle being done. So hopefully it'll look pretty good by the end of this video here. So as a quick note, I'm going to go ahead and file save scene as. I'm going to save this actually and come back to it. So Aang walk. Okay. So let me just start by showing you sort of the very beginning. Starting off with the rig here. And what I have already done on my version of the rig is I made sure that my default file, because I've been doing save as to save out copies for my air scooter pose and also for now this walk cycle. But on my main rig, I went and selected the big ring around the base of Aang to make sure that I have already turned on the FK controls for the arms so that we move them one joint at a time rather than having to move the wrist around. And that is done by clicking the big ring, and then over here in the channel box, you will see L arm IKFK blend and R arm L IKFK blend. Make sure those are turned to true, which is the value of 1 instead of 0. So true, false, 1, 0. So make them true so that you have your arm controls fully activated. And while I'm still in here, let me show you folks about the timeline down here. So the timeline is the stuff that we're touching on today. Not really a lot of notes to really go over with this, just a few pointers, so to speak. So our timeline works very similar to Toon Boom. By default, this frame rate should be set to 24 frames per second down here in this little drop-down menu. So you can change that playback speed. Down here is your timeline showing you, in this case, your current frame range, but this is where you might, change whatever frames. And this little bar I'm scrolling here is your viewfinder or playback range. So right now I'm looking at frames 1 through 30, but there are 50 frames in my timeline currently. So one thing to start off by noting is that for our walk cycle, just like in the first semester, we will need a particular amount of frames if our poses are every 10. So it's a little different because our first pose is set on frame 1, and then we have a pose on frame 10. So we'll have contact, down, pass, up on 30. And then 40 would be contact number 2. Down pose, another 10 at 60 for the pass pose, another 10 at 70 for the up pose, which means that our so-called third contact pose or a return to our first contact pose would be at frame 80, right? So this number right here is the total number of frames in your animation, this value here. So make sure you have that set up. Make sure your controls are set on the rig to the FK controls via the big ring here at the bottom. And so now I'm going to go back to the one I was working on just a moment ago. Oh, I saved it in my canned project scenes. That's hilarious. Okay, hold on. Not increment and god damn it. Save as. And it's saved into the wrong spot. I'm just making sure it goes to the right spot. Okay, so this is walk, and I'm not incrementing walk.ma. Okay. Anyway, so this is where we left off last period. So I have my contact pose set on frame 1. Then at frame 10, I have my down pose. And then my up pose. So we have, or my pass pose rather, my pass pose, not my up pose. Excuse me, I was like, that doesn't seem right. So we have contact, down, pass, and you folks should see we now have the return of our reference sheet here down at the bottom of the semester 2 section my animation, Aang walk cycle. So we are here currently at the pass pose on our first half of our cycle. So our right leg is currently transiting from the front of the pose through to being behind us. So currently our right leg is straight and holding our weight. And, oh, that reminds me, I don't think on frame 20 I adjusted. Did I adjust the pelvis? I did. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay, banger. Cool. So, pass pose, and now we go to our up pose. And so now I'm going to be making our right leg transit back. And I'll be showing you how to play around with the foot roll too, because you'll be using that a lot today. So on our up pose, you can see that there's a little break at the toe here on our right foot, and it is straight and behind us. So I'm going to take this right leg here. I'm going to grab the controller. Oh, you know what? I'm skipping a step. I'm sorry. So I'm going to move this forward. I'm going to click my playback rangefinder and bring it forward to 10, 20, and 30, because I'm working on 20 now. So another thing I want to point out to you folks is down here in the bottom right, you'll see a little plus sign with a little swirl around it. I don't think this shows up in the video, but I'm going to zoom in on it on the screen. This little icon right here is called auto keyframe toggle. And what it does is if you already have a key, I think it also works if you don't have a keyframe already made, but if you already have a keyframe on a frame and on a particular controller and you make a tweak, it will update the keyframe's value automatically for you rather than you having to press S to set a keyframe. And that brings us to manually setting keyframes. So for starters, I am going to select all of the controls on the rig by clicking and dragging across all of them, and then I will hit oh, I'm on 30. Whoopsie. I'm on frame 30 now. I'm on frame 30. I have all of my controls selected, and then I will hit S for set keyframe. S as in set keyframe. So now all 1934 channels on all of these controls have been keyframed at this point in time with their values. So that way we're continuing to make sure that everything stays locked up in between each set of keyframes. So here on frame 30 now, with my keyframes made, now I can grab my right ankle here, bring this back, and you can see that two things are happening. One, my leg snapped right to straight as soon as it needed to. And then also the further back I push this, it automatically foot rolls. Now I will point out that the up pose is not super far behind us. It's very exaggerated, I will point out, in the Richard Lewis illustration for good reason, but we don't need to exaggerate our rig that much, so I'll bring it back here. And now on our foot roll, so our foot roll and our foot roll limit are going to be important to us today. I have my foot roll limit currently set to 0, and my foot roll when I scroll this up. So if you want to scroll these values, you would just select the word foot roll, hold your mouse out in the workspace, press down the middle mouse button, and you'll be able to scroll that value. Now, I actually do need break in the foot. So let me get the angle right on this. So it should be going at like looks like a 45 degree-ish angle. And this is the degrees, basically. So we got that going. And then the foot roll limit is set to 0, so it's never going to have a break at the toe. So we need to increase the foot roll limit past 40, so that when we are at this angle, the foot will still break. And so now I can bring this slightly back now until it's just about, we don't want the actual pop to happen, folks. We don't want it to pop to straight. So we want it to be just slightly in where there's the slightest amount of bend at the knee. So things to keep in mind. You don't want it to pop to straight. So there. We got that. That's good. My auto keyframe toggle is on, so it's figured this all out. My foot roll limit, my foot roll have been keyframed, as well as my position. And so this ring back here is my left foot that is transiting to the front. Oh, you know what? Hold on, let me look at this ring. Boom. Boom, we lifted this up. So on this one, okay, so I'm going to have to adjust this leg in a second. So I do need to bring my hips up slightly on this one, which means that this should be slightly more forward, and there we go. Now, why did I bring the hips up? Why is that important? So if you look here, right, at our walk cycle, your head will drop down because your hips are dropping your weight onto your feet. But the same is true when you're bringing your feet forward and you're on this little tiptoe for a second, your head will pop up, right? So we pop the hips up a little bit. All right, back to the left leg. So we'll grab that controller again. Our left leg, you can see, still a pretty decently 90-degree angle here, foot angled towards the ground. So first we'll bring this forward. Then I'm going to reduce the foot roll significantly. So it looks like about 50. So that it stays hanging down. I'll bring this forward again. Bring this down. Okay. And so now on this one, I need to adjust my hip shoulders, so to speak. The pelvis controls. Whoops, that's the wrist. There we go. And this hip should be down now because we're putting weight on it. And we're about to step forward with that one. So I tilted the bowl of the hip slightly. Boom. Now onto the arms. Again, I have my FK controls on, so we're controlling from clavicle on down. And so taking a look at how the arms sway through this, the right arm starts behind us, and then as the right leg transits back, the right arm transits forward. So now our shoulder, rather than being rolled back, is going to be rolled forward. So I'm just going to save myself some hassle, zero out the controller, then I can grab it again, roll the arm forward, and up slightly. Okay, and then on the ball joint, bring the arm slightly forward. Whoops. Grab this. So looking at this, still kind of slight bend back in the arm as we sway. This hand should be neutral and down. I think this arm is too far forward already. Oh, I'm on the wrong. Haha. Okay. Shoulders up a little too much. Okay. Okay. So now that arm is swaying forward, and then that brings us to the other arm, which again, I'm going to zero out the gimbal on the clavicle. And this way, as it sways backwards, we want it to drop the shoulder back, roll it back slightly. Then our arm here, we want to bring slightly back. Add a little slight more bend into this. And then, yes, let's bring this slightly back out. Okay. And this wrist, whoops, excuse me, this wrist should be more towards the ground too as it sways back. And did I mess with this? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what we have on the books so far. We have contact through up pose. So here, I'm going to turn everything off and then polygons. Here's what we got so far. You'll notice there's a little jitter there on the first down pose. I need to go back and do that, but I'm going to do all those corrections at the end once I know that everything is more or less locked and loaded. So there we have it. So far, we go back to all. Okay. So now we're about to hit our second contact pose. So we have contact 1 at the first contact, I should say, at frame 1. Then down, number 1 at 10. Pass number 1 at 20. Up number 1 at 30, which brings us to contact number 2 at 40. I guess I should do this. I guess it doesn't matter. Whatever. 30, 40. So, same thing as we did before. As you start a new pose, you will select all of your controls, and you will keyframe them. Okay, great. Everything is keyframed now. So now, I typically try to work from my front leg first. So in this case, that's our left leg. So for the left leg, it is striking out in front. So I'm going to start by literally resetting this foot. So I'm going to 0 this out. Boom. Foot roll set to 0. Boom. There we have it. Okay, so this foot is striking on the heel. So for starters, I'm going to need to increase my foot roll, or decrease, I guess it. And you'll notice I have my foot roll limit set to 0 currently, and that is what is stopping my foot from having that little bend at the toes, like we have on our right foot. So that's why my foot roll is set to negative 50, I guess. Bring it forward till now it's starting to lift up off the ground. So let me unfoot roll this a little bit and bring this forward. And also we need to bring the hips back down to 0. So I'm going to 0 this out. Or are the hips on 0? Or on 1? They're negative 5 on 1. Oh, okay. Cool. Good to know. So I guess on my my contact pose here, I do need to bring my hips down slightly. Minus 5-ish is what they said. Okay, that makes sense. Let's add some more foot roll back in, and then we'll strike this foot right out in front. Cool. That looks great. So now we got Aang striking on his back heel, or I mean his front heel rather, of his left foot. So for this foot, if we take a look here, not much change in the shape at the toes here. The angle is just slightly higher for this portion of it. So I'll increase my foot roll. Sure. And then what I'm doing is I'm bringing my right foot back until I have about a nice 160-degree angle in there, inscribed on the back of the knee. So again, we're hitting this second contact pose up here. So shaping on that looks good. Hips I just did. I think I need to address, this. Would this be like this? Yeah, because then on the next one I'm going to drop my weight. Okay, so yeah, the hips would be like this. Or would they? I guess they'd be neutral on this one. So let me 0 out these hip controls. Let me neutralize these. Boop. Okay. And then that brings us to the arms again. So let me start in this case with the left arm, the leading arm. And this one should be, or not leading arm, I guess. but this one should be behind us. Leading legs arm. So I'm going to roll the clavicle back very slightly, down a little bit. Boom. Pivot this arm back more. Rotate it out slightly. And then more like this. Right? And if we take a look, you can always check from the silhouette angle if you go into your side view. I have 6 turned on, by the way, in here so that you can see the textures as a reminder. Okay, so that looks good. And then the wrist, how do I need to adjust the wrist? The wrist is flared back. So in this case, I'll just slightly put a little bit more tilt onto the wrist. And here we go for this one. So clavicle slightly forward. I'll roll the shoulder up a little bit. And okay, so on this one, we want to bring this forward more. The wrist, we want to add a little more bend to, right? Little bit more bend. Oh, you know what? On this up pose, I don't think I did my arm right. Hold on. Just a little backwards detour. This should have a much more bent arm, I guess, on this one. Cool. All right, so we're back to here. Boom. That's going to look great. And that's going to bring us to this. Is it swaying back enough? No, it is not. So we need to sway this back more. Okay, and then this one. Bringing it forward, and then this one needs to have the arm swaying forward. It's forward and down. Okay. So it does actually break down on this one. Okay, so the hand's breaking down. Cool. And that is contact pose number 2. Boom. So what's great is when you're on the second half, you don't have to guess for some of this stuff. So like I can go forward here to 50 and do what I need to do, which is to select all of my controls again. S as in set keyframe. Cool, we got all that set. And then it should be frame 10 for the hips. What we got on this bad boy? -14. So then here on 50, bring this down about the same. Cool. And then so now foot roll set to 0. We want this bad boy on the ground. Let's take a look here. Flat. Let's see the angle. Angle looks good. Again, the angle at this knee is based on both the location of this, but also how low you dip the hips. So we have that going. Hips are down. On this one, you can see that there's no longer break in the foot. It's just straight. So, and then toe on the ground. So foot roll limit in this one is getting set back to 0 now. And you'll see that the foot immediately goes back to being straight as it banks, or rolls rather. And then you can roll this very high up so it's on its toe, right? And if you look at this image, you can see how much it needs to bend. And then you bring it back like this until you get the angle you need. This looks like more of a 120 degree angle here. So this is probably still too far. Boom. And there we go. Okay, so that's all set. I already set my hip location. Now I'm going to set my pelvis. And I'm going to slightly bias this down onto my left hip and up on the right hip, because we're about to pull this one up. And he's putting his weight on his other foot. So then for the arms, we'll go left arm first. So the left arm is now the behind arm as a reminder. So the left arm should end up looking like this. So I'm going to bring this arm, the clavicle I don't really need to mess with, honestly. I think I'm just going to bring this back a little more. And then on this one, I think we want a little bit more, a little less break, I guess, in the arm. So I'll straighten it slightly more. Makes me think I want to go back to this one. I'm going to put a little bit more crook in this arm. Okay. Boom. We go here. Straightens out a little bit more. Great. And then the wrist, we break it a little bit further back. Okay. Cool. Flip around. Grab this bad boy. Again, I'm not going to mess with the clavicle on this one. It's basically the same. So on this one, we need to bring this bad boy a little further forward. We're going to eliminate, yes, this forward one should also straighten out slightly more. Hand should break slightly down. Boom. Done. That's down. Now to frame 60. Let's do that pass pose. So select it all. Let me zoom out, make sure I got everything. Okay. S to set keyframe on frame 60. And away we go. So, like I said, you don't have to guess on some of this stuff anymore. So for starters, I am going to just zero out this foot so it goes back to the middle of the body because we're going to put all of that weight on it. And then I can scroll back here. And it should be frame 30 would be my, oh, it's my up pose. I'm so sorry. Go to frame 20, my third pose, to see where are these hips at. They are at -1. Okay. So the hips are at -1. I will just put in -1. Boom. Okay. So now, this left foot control, I'm going to zero this out, boom. Goes right back to the middle. Okay. And I'm going to push it slightly back. And there we go with that. So I've already placed my hips, with the height of them. So now with this foot, I can bring it forward now. And we can take a look at our pass pose. So it should still be hanging down, but we need to bring it up. And it needs to be behind us. Okay. Let me see if can I bring this? Yeah, I'll bring this forward slightly more. Where's the foot? Yeah, okay. Close to the knee. Okay. Cool. So there's our pass pose. I didn't really need to mess with the foot roll at all because we're just pulling it forward from the location it was at on the down pose. So hips we did. I don't need to mess with the leg shoulders as they're called, the hips. So that just brings us again to our arms here. I'm going to neutralize the clavicles again, zero them out, and then I'm going to ever so slightly bias this in the direction it's coming from. In this case, this is coming from the forward direction, so I'll rotate this slightly forward and up. And then coming to here, this arm should come more or less to our side. And this is the right arm. So yeah, this one should be biased in front of the body slightly, as you can see. So let me bring this more a little there. And then if I look at this arm, it's just straight. So let me straighten some of this stuff out. Still think this is forward a little too much. Oops, there you go. Okay. And then that brings us back over here. So again, I'm going to zero out the clavicle. Rotate it slightly back and down. Then bring this one about to the side, just slightly back. Arm bent a little more as we're bringing it forward, and the wrist, take out some of the sway. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Wait. Oh, I just screwed up my down pose. Way to look at the frame you're working on, Christopher. Good stuff. Glad this is all in the demo. I bet you I'm gonna hit my undo limit here in a second. Do I have infinite on? Am I actually a god? Okay. So yeah, fun fact, folks, we'll put this in the notes. If you go to your preferences and you go under undo, oh, my cue size is set to 75. Good to know. You can change how many undos are in your undo, like how many undo states it will keep in its memory.
Tell us that now.
I have no comment.
You wait until the end of the year to tell
You guys should just get good. What do you want from me? Yeah. What if I said that it was a planned psyop to make you redo work? Nah, I typically do go over it earlier in the year. I think I just forgot. I'm like legitimately like, oh, yeah, sorry. It's not.
You plan for us to fail.
No, I wouldn't do that. Okay. So anyway, remember what I did a second ago? Let's do that again. That was fun. I enjoyed doing it, so I'm going to do it again. So yeah, we'll move this back. All right, I'm going to speed run this. Get us caught up. Okay, so this is, yeah, that's the leg we're dropping weight on. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, this guy goes here. Neat. And then let's just call this good. And then okay. Whoops. Sure. Down. Back. Down. Boom. 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 Great. Okay. Now to 70. Final pose we need to build. So our second up pose. Select them all. Set keyframe. Now we grab this ankle here. It's going to go further back. Move tool. Boom. Foot roll. We want to increase a lot, but we need to also then increase our foot roll limit past the value that we set for our foot roll. So that way it actually breaks at the leg. And then we want to try and straighten this without getting the leg to actually pop to straight. So something like that's good. Foot roll, whoops. Foot roll I probably can increase actually. Let me do that. I'll foot roll a little more. Move it a little further back. Okay, cool. And then that brings us to this feller. Bring it forward. And foot roll needs to be reduced. Boom, boom, boom. Bring it down. This... Oh, you know what? I might have to replay it. So this should be up slightly, which means that this should be more back here. And the reason we know that is because you can see here on the diagram how your head transits based on the height of the hips. So, boom. I think this might honestly even be too high. Let me do that. Okay. Now I can bring this back. Yeah, it looks more natural. Okay. And then, yeah, the hips still have their weight on this. And then that brings us to the arms. And now my arms are, again, I'm going to reset this. And now they're swiveling back again. And so for this one, you go slightly back. Yeah, that's the right arm. This one should go slightly back. More bend in the elbow, I guess. And then angled more forward, right? Yeah. Okay. That brings us to this, and we'll zero this out again. And this time we want to raise this slightly up, slightly forward. And so on this one, arm will be ever so slightly out in front, right? A little bit more crook in the arm. It's still angled down. Okay. Okay. So now our final pose at 80. I don't need to do any work for it because we've already made it. So what I'll do is I'll go to frame 80. I'm going to select all of the controls. I'm going to scroll myself back to frame 1. And I guess I didn't need to select frame 80. But then I will shift click on frame 1. And that will make it red. You right click. Keys. Okay, cool. Actually, it's just copy. It's just copy. So go to copy. And you just go to 80. And then you right click in frame 80. Paste. And paste connect would link it to frame 1. You don't need to do that necessarily. I'm just going to do paste. Boom. All of my keys are there. And so now I'm going to use this little, the slider range bar. I'm going to click on the first part, drag it all the way so I see my entire time slider. And so I'm going to look over this briefly because I know I have a little bit of a snap here. With the, yeah, with how quickly this happens. So let me see. This one. I need a keyframe there so that it doesn't move as fast, so it doesn't snap. Oh, and even still, okay, so hold on. So here it starts breaking, so I'm going to put on frame 8. I'm going to keyframe it to like right here. It still snaps, holy smokes. So here's what I need to do, I guess. On this one, I need to actually increase the foot roll or decrease it more. It snaps immediately. I'll just straight up bring this in slightly more. Maybe it was just a little too exaggerated. Okay, that's better. I would have to sit here and play around with the foot roll control, but it's not that big a deal. Boom, 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 boom. Oh. Ha. Okay. So the keyframe for foot roll should be completed here. So I'm going to just take this and boom. We'll do that. So he strikes on his heel, comes down, boom. Do we have an extension problem here too? Yeah, we do. So on this one, let me bring this forward slightly. Okay, there we go. Same thing here. This one needs to be at more or less. I mean, you know, it's not going to be perfect without me going in and being very meticulous, unfortunately. So the end result, though, so I have all of my keyframes made. I went back and put in a couple of tweak keyframes on specifically the ankles, about 6 frames in between their 10-frame intervals. So this is what it would look like. Also, I would suggest when you play this back, you reduce it from 1 to 80 to 1 to 79, since 80 and 1 are the same frame. So that way you don't see a little frame jitter when the cycle restarts. So I have it set, my playback range is 1 to frame 79 of the 80 frames. So here's what it'll look like. Now it's going to look very mechanical because, one, we're doing it on hard 10-frame intervals. If you remember to what Mr. Becker said earlier this year, you never want to have everything striking at the same time, which is, again, it's just a function of how I am asking you to do the assignment. You know, obviously, if you wanted this to not look very mechanical, you would have it so that things didn't strike at the same time. Particularly, the hands are swinging as a factor of secondary action from the motion of our bodies. So, like, the arms actually sway on a slight delay from the, you know, whatever motion your legs are going at, because they're swinging in response. Pendicular motion. Nailed it. So, yeah, this is what it would look like at the end. Just a very simple, we got all of the parts moving in motion. Yes, it's on a rigid, robotic 10-frame interval, but the second half of this magic, if you wanted to push it, would be playing with the timing when things are hitting on certain keyframes. You have all the keyframes done, so then you can start moving, you know, like all of the right arm and left arm keyframes to like 1 or 2, 3 frames ahead or behind of the keyframe for the legs or whatever, so that it looks a lot more fluid. But this is our mechanical Aang walk, so ready for M. Night Shyamalan to put into his movie. So thank you folks for watching this demo on making a basic walk cycle with the Aang rig.